You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 5th of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's programme, Germany's government faces a major vote on pensions, the topic that every government in the Western world hates to tackle. We'll look at the stakes for Germany's economy and for its Chancellor Friedrich Merz. After that, we are joined by our Eurovision desk chief, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, for big news from the song contest. Fernando, you're in Paris.
Hi Chris, I am in Paris now, and of course today we'll be talking about the EBU's decision for next year's Eurovision. And yes, it is a very difficult moment for the song contest.
There have been some boycotts. We'll see where Eurovision goes from here. After that, we're at the international luxury travel market in Cannes, dipping into the world of cruises.
It's about encouraging our guests to slow down. Time passes so quickly. Just reminding ourselves that it's okay to press pause.
And finally, it is December and marks the debut of our winter series of recommendations today from the world of luxury with Monocle's own Brenda Toohey. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. And a happy Friday to all of our listeners around the world. We're going to start with pension and retirement reform, a topic that strikes fear in the hearts of politicians the world over. Just ask France, where any change to retirement ages or other pension benefits has literally toppled governments, or the US, where Social Security reform is very much considered the third rail of politics. Today, it is the turn of Germany, Europe's largest economy. Berlin's parliament, the Bundestag, is due to vote on a raft of pension reforms backed by Chancellor Friedrich Merz and his coalition government, though critics say it is far too little to actually get the country's finances in order. Well, joining me now is Carsten Brzeski, Global Head of Macro for ING Research. Carsten, good to have you on the show. Hello.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
So it is a big day in the Bundestag today, Carsten. There was already a big vote on voluntary military service this morning, which was part of a deal agreed a few weeks ago. Then there's this pension reforms bill. It's far less certain. I mean, what's the mood in politics in Germany right now?
Politics are struggling with all these economic challenges that the country is in after I don't know how many years of economic stagnation, at the same time facing severe competition from China. So politicians are really struggling to get their heads around. And when you look at the pension issue, I wouldn't even call this a reform. What it rather is an attempt to continue the status quo, which also shows that this government apparently is very afraid of going for very aggressive structural reforms.
And just put this into some context for us then, Carsten. How much of a mess is Germany in when it comes to its pensions and finances compared to, say, France and other European countries?
Germany is one of the fastest aging country in Europe. So is it currently in a mess? No, it is not. But the German system is a so-called pay-as-you-go system. So basically saying that the people currently working are paying the pensions of the elderly. And of course, with an aging society, also with people then having the advantage or the luxury of staying alive for much longer than in the past after entering retirement, there is an enormous pressure on financing or funding this system. I have to give you some numbers. I think currently it is more or less that only 1/3 of the working population is in retirement. In 5 years from now, it will be 44%. So this is the big shift in demographics. At the same time, already now, the federal government spends, I think, 15% of its budget in closing the funding gap of the pension system. In a couple of years from now, this would be 20%. So there is an increasing financial burden on this pension system. So you would need some changes, be it change the retirement age, change the contributions, maybe try to set up a private or capital market-based pillar next to the public sanctions. But what is currently being voted in German parliament is a continuation of the status quo, so keeping the pension levels unchanged and having no changes to retirement ages or the financing of the whole system.
Now, what's interesting is also that Friedrich Merz, of course, is a conservative. In some ways, he's more of a hardline conservative, maybe not here. He seems to have catered to the left. He's obviously in a coalition also with the Social Democrats. So compared to, say, France, his fight right now is with conservatives, particularly young conservatives who are saying he's not doing enough. Tell us about that. Why has he catered more to the left than even maybe his own party here?
Yeah, that is very interesting. That is what many people are kind of grappling with, because Friedrich Merz came in as the big reformer. He was also supported, especially by the young ones in his party during the election campaign, being the big reformer, finally changing the economy. What he is now struggling to do is, he is in realpolitik, so finally realizing that this is a democracy, it's a parliamentarian democracy, and that the chancellor cannot decide simply on his own on new reforms. And as he is in a coalition with the Social Democrats, in the coalition agreement signed in May, they agreed on keeping this status quo until 2031 and have a commission with experts starting 2026 to look into potential possible changes to the system. So it comes down to the fact that for the sake of stability of his coalition government, Friedrich Merz now says, all right, let's go first for the money and then reforms afterwards. And that is exactly what the young ones in his party are criticizing. They're saying, oh, gosh, there is so an enormous financial burden coming on the younger generation that it should be first reforms and then the money. And on top of that, the young ones, I think, are also increasingly disappointed by what they see a fallen hero, namely a Friedrich Merz, that is not delivering on what he promised during the election campaign, namely really implementing and bringing structural reforms to the German economy.
And finally, Carsten, how are markets going to be responding to all of this? How have they been responding, investors? Because yes, on the one hand, they want political stability. That's one thing that Germany has that France doesn't. But on the other hand, they want these issues tackled. And as you said at the very outset of this, Germany's economy has been stagnating for a long time.
Yeah, I think for markets, it's still hard to really fully understand German politics, also the nature of a federal system. So I think markets have now turned slightly too pessimistic again, because yes, these tensions within the government clearly bring the risk that the government will not make it till the end of the 4-year term in office. But at the same time, to bring in a bit of optimism, we have a budget for 2026, contrary to the French. This budget includes big fiscal stimulus finally. So I still think, and that is where markets, in my view, are a bit too pessimistic, that in 2026 we will at least see this fiscal stimulus reaching the economy, which then should lead to a rebound of the German economy in 2026. Whether this government will really deliver on big, far-reaching structural reforms is a completely different topic.
And something we'll be coming back to in 2026, I'm sure. That was Carsten Brzeski of ING Research. Thank you very much for joining us. Now here's Hassan Anderson with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. Vladimir Putin has said Russia is ready to provide uninterrupted shipments of fuel to India during a joint press briefing in Delhi with the country's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The comments come after the US hit India with an additional 25% tariff over its purchases of Russian oil, arguing it was funding Moscow's war in Ukraine. Netflix is closing in on a deal to buy the film and streaming businesses of Warner Bros. Discovery, emerging as the top bidder with an offer of about $20 per share ahead of rivals Comcast and Paramount Skydance. Antitrust specialists, however, and figures close to Trump's warn that the merging of the two largest US streaming platforms could face significant approval hurdles. And Versace's creative director, Dario Vitale, has stepped down after less than 9 months in the role, just 2 days after the brand sailed to rival Italian fashion house Prada. The company said the departure was mutually agreed and thanked Vitale for his work during the transition, while Prada plans to name a successor in due course. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Hassan. We'll head to Paris now because that is where we find our senior correspondent and, most importantly for this segment, Eurovision desk chief, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Fernando, bonjour to Paris.
Bonjour, Chris. Great talking to you from here. And with big news ahead, actually.
With big news. There's been news every day this week that we've brought you on because so much has been happening on all of your different beats. And I do want to talk Eurovision, obviously, in a moment. But first, what are you up to in Paris?
Well, I'm doing a series of lovely interviews. So if you are a Stack listener, I'm talking to editors of some of my favorite magazines, including creative director Frank Durand, from Holiday Magazine, which I adore. So far, it's been a very good day, and there's more to come this afternoon as well.
More to come this afternoon, so let's turn to Eurovision because that is the big news. Just tell us what has happened, basically, in the last 24 hours.
It's interesting that it is big news, but in a weird way, not much have happened. So I think the more controversial decision would be if Israel would not be allowed to compete next year. But I think the EBU kind of, I say they played it safe, but I don't think there's a safe option here because it would have been a divisive decision, whatever they took. So basically, the thing is, Chris, I think we spoke a few weeks ago that the EBU had changed already a few things, especially in the voting system next year. So I think, for example, instead of voting 20 times, you're going to be able to only vote 10. I think they'll be more restrictive to state-backed campaigns, like Israel did this year with their candidate Yuval Raphael. But the big story here is, so they said, listen, we've changed, and I think we welcome all the countries that want to participate on Eurovision with these new changes. But the problem is, a lot of countries did not like this decision, and they decided to boycott the event. So far we already have the Netherlands, Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, and I believe there might be more to come. How will Eurovision looks like next year? It's a difficult time for the event, perhaps one of the toughest in its history.
It's an incredibly difficult time, given, as you say, that by saying that Israel can potentially join, 4 members at least at this point have decided to boycott. Do you imagine that the EBU, the European Broadcasting Union, will have been trying other things behind the scenes? There was this meeting over the last couple of days, or since yesterday as well. I'm just imagining what might have happened behind that. Did they try to maintain some kind of unity here, or was there just a recognition that this was never going to be popular, never going to be unanimous to allow Israel to participate?
I think there's a recognition that, they can't reach a unanimous decision at this stage. And Chris, even the hosting country next year, Austria, of course, I believe some other countries said that if Israel is out, they would also boycott the event. So there would be boycotts either way. But at the same time, we mentioned the countries that have refused to take part next year. But I think, for example, the UK, and I think a lot of the large countries already said that, they are in. I think some of the Nordic countries already. And from the countries that are boycotting, I think the one to look out for, I would say it's Spain. And the reason for that, because they're one of the big 5 countries, so one of the top 5 countries that, provide some funding for the event. So without Spain, there'll be less funding. I'm not sure exactly the details, how much each country funds. I don't think Spain is the first. I presume somewhere like the UK or Germany pays a bit more. But nevertheless, there will be a financial loss if Spain is not in.
And Fernando, do you have any sense of whether talks on this will continue? Could a decision be changed, reversed, amended at some point? Whether that's, obviously they would want those countries boycotting to come back, but anything to do with, for that matter, Israel as well? Or is this pretty much a final decision at this point?
Listen, I think about Israel potentially a final decision, but when it comes to the boycott, I think there will be talks. I don't think it's under the EBU interest to have, so many countries boycotting the event. I mean, so far, as I said, we have 4, potentially a few more countries will do. It will be a lesser event. And Chris, looking at the Eurovision, one of the most watched, television shows in the world, literally. I mean, we're talking here about huge numbers. With so many big countries boycotting, probably they're not going to be interested in the event as well, because they're not only boycotting, they're not going to show it on TV. So if Spain's out, it's not going to be broadcast, on their kind of broadcaster. So, gosh, and I will be going, of course, to Vienna next year. It's going to be an interesting one. In the last Eurovisions that I've attended, there's been a lot of tension in the air as well. More security, and I think next year, even more so.
Just tell us more about that, Fernando. What are you expecting from next year? It will be in Vienna, as you say, you'll be there. And whatever side of this you come down on, clearly it's going to be an incredibly tense atmosphere, a charged atmosphere. There may be protests on either side, and all of this just distracts from the music at the end of the day. What are you expecting from the actual contest?
I expect protest. I expect a very, very difficult competition, which is a shame. As an Eurovision lover, I genuinely actually enjoy the music. I genuinely enjoy, some of the sillier elements as well. It's going to be even hard for me, if I may say, as an Eurovision correspondent, because, of course, we can talk about, I don't know who's Austria sending next year. Could be a fun artist, but then we can't deny the realities, the behind the scenes, the politics. This year, more than ever, it's very clear, and countries are divided. And by the way, when I say countries are divided, of course, the Spanish broadcaster, they took this decision, but I would say even in the country, I'm sure a lot of Spanish people are against the decision. Some Spanish people are pro this decision. So it is creating a lot of divisions.
And just finally, Fernando, I mean, this is meant to be an event about music. That is part of the reason for the European Broadcasting Union's defense of this decision. It's not about politics, but at the end of the day, Eurovision is always, to some degree, about politics. I'm just curious, is there any way you feel that Eurovision can go back from this?
Yes, it can. It had a long history. Other things have happened. It will be tough, but you can't just destroy Eurovision like this. I think it is a complicated period, and, it's hard. I think even, I'm sure people at the EBU, they have different views on that. Look what happened to Russia, which was a mainstay of the event. They were, always in the top 5. They hosted the event before, and now they're also out. So they've been here before. As I said, it's one of the worst kind of moments in Eurovision history, but of course they'll go back. People love Eurovision. I think it's important. It's still one of the few things that, in a way, made people happy, in Europe, that it kind of united then at this period. But yeah, to talk about the word union at this moment, it feels a bit strange.
Yes, but we do hope that unity will return in some way, shape or form. Fernando Augusto Pacheco, Eurovision Desk Chief from Paris, thank you very much for joining us. This is The Briefing. You are back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Chermek, and we'll head a little further south now to Cannes, which was home to the international luxury travel market for this week. Monocle Radio did have a delegation on site, meeting some of the leading movers and shakers in the industry. And earlier, Monocle's Emma Nelson caught up with president of luxury cruise company Explora Journeys, Anna Nash, to discuss their announcement of a 128-day world journey starting in 2029 and a new addition to its fleet.
So yes, indeed, we just launched our world journey. We've called it Endless Worlds. It's quite an emotive passage or journey, if you will, where we circumnavigate the globe. It's a 128-day journey, 63 different destinations, 4 continents and 29 countries. So east to west, from Dubai all the way around to Barcelona. So that's happening in 2029. But of course, we announced much earlier to build up that excitement and anticipation.
What was it that made you decide to do this?
Various things. We're a brand that's built on the art of listening. We knew that this was something that our guests wanted to experience. We are seeing that our guests want to have richer, longer, sort of much deeper journeys. And of course, being an ocean travel brand, we need to have a world journey within our sort of calendar.
Because there is a real need to make something like the global journey distinctive, isn't there, from other adventures?
It's got to feel different. It's got to feel enriching. It's got to feel quite emotive, because there's a reason why somebody would embark on such a long journey. But saying that, we actually break it up into 7 different passages. So for those that are shorter in time, they don't have to do the full 128 journey. But no, for us, what will differentiate it to a more regular 7-night or 14-night sailing, there'll be a more collective community on board, because there will be guests that are staying longer with us. But we'll enrich things like the culinary experiences to really reflect those destinations that we're passing through. We'll have lecturers, we'll do different excursions to really delve deeper into some of those destinations.
When we're talking about modern luxury now, this incorporates the likes of wellness and the spa and what have you. And bringing in the modern requirements of the modern luxury customer, what does that make you do at Explora?
I think in general, taking aside perhaps the world journey, I think it's about encouraging our guests to slow down, because I think time passes so quickly. Just reminding ourselves that it's okay to press pause and to give ourselves permission to slow down. And I think there's something perhaps psychological in the whole ethos of journeys that move, in the sense that perhaps it does give you that permission, because we're moving you somewhere different every day. You get to wake up in a new destination, so perhaps you can give yourself a moment, give yourself that permission to just slow down and stop running around and trying to overachieve and do things, tick off things off our sort of to-do list. So I think there's a pause, a moment of reflection, and enjoying that beauty of not running through life.
It is an amazing thing that in order to stop, you have to be moved. I quite like that idea that if you get onto one of your journeys, then that is when you actually physically stop. One thing that is huge this year, and is huge right across hospitality in 2026 onwards, is technology, though. I mean, it is so embedded now in the way that the travel industry operates. But when you are now trying to bring in new technology into the way that you do business and the way that you communicate with the people who get on board your journeys, you then also have to strike that balance, because a lot of us will get on a holiday and want to turn the phone off,
yes,
and not have to interact solely with the screen.
It's true. There's got to be a human connection, and we need technology. I think sometimes it can overcomplicate planning, sometimes of travel. Sometimes you just want to pick up the phone actually to an expert and ask for help and advice, because ultimately, you know, you've chosen a week or 2 weeks to have your precious time off. You want to make sure that it's absolutely right and you feel fulfilled and reaching that desired state, relaxation, discovery, enrichment. So I think there's got to be that balance between human and technology. But of course, when you're on the ship, I think seeing the horizon, seeing an ever-changing destination or a new destination appearing in the horizon gives you that sense of wonder and perhaps encourages you not to be on your screens.
And next summer, when we have the inaugural voyage of Explora 3, yes. Tell us about that.
So that will actually be a big moment for us, because we'll be halfway through our vision. So we, as I said earlier, we have 6 ships in total by 2028. So for us, Explora 3 is really a big moment that we're reaching that halfway mark. She will be launched in the Mediterranean at the end of July and will be our first LNG powered ship in our fleet. So of course that helps us in our mission to get to that net zero by 2050, which is really, really our goal.
It's hugely important for you, isn't it?
It's very important for us. We're a family-owned business. It's very important for our family that, you know, we're as clean and as sustainable as we can be. But we know that that comes into the decision-making process, of course, with our guests as to how they travel and when they travel and indeed how they spend their money.
Anna Nash, president of Explora Journeys, speaking to Monocle's Emma Nelson at the International Luxury Travel Market in Cannes. This is The Briefing. And finally, on today's show, it is the kickoff of our weekly winter series where we tap Monocle's editors and leading contributors to delight us with their cold weather recommendations, from unique gift ideas and ways to look sharp in the cold to seasonal dishes and wines to celebrate with. For this week's edition, Anita Riotta sat down with Monocle's luxury markets editor Brenda Toohey to discuss her gift ideas to elevate this holiday season. Brenda began with a Midori House favorite.
Well, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's a subscription to Confect magazine. Wouldn't that be wonderful? You'd start off with the spring issue, you'd follow that with summer, autumn, and then into our winter High Jewel special, my particular favorite. But, each issue is devoted to a different theme. We've got wellness, we've got design and travel, and Confect is a big, dense vehicle. So there's lots and lots of reading. Beautiful photographs to look at. It's pretty fabulous.
And maybe who you give the Confect subscription to will find a gift for you in the pages of Confect. So maybe it really will come back your way.
That could happen, all right.
Well, then, let's go maybe in the more traditional luxury space. If we want to really deck ourselves out, give our loved ones a bit of bling, a bit of shine, what do you suggest?
I have to say, I was at Chanel the other day, and I was shown the most beautiful dainty watch, the Chanel Premier Ribbon Red. It has a beautiful gold bezel, which echoes the stopper of the Chanel No. 5 bottle. So it's that exquisite shape. It's wonderful, and it's all set onto a rubber strap. But the rubber strap, which is red, is very, very slim and slender. It's really a juxtaposition of 18-karat gold with rubber. It's kind of fabulous and magical, and red is a great color for this time of year. It's so beautiful. I think it would just do wonders on any wrist. It's fabulous.
I love that. Then maybe if you're buying a luxury gift for someone who is not a big jewelry wearer, not a big watch wearer, what do you suggest for them?
Well, it's always important to smell good. Not even good, but great. And there is the classic, also red, from Maison Francis Kurkdjian, the Baccarat Rouge 540 perfume. Now, it's called 540 because that is the temperature that crystal turns red. And Baccarat, famously, with their red crystal, created this and sort of championed it. But this fragrance is very, very special. It's not overpowering. It's elegant. It's sophisticated. A woody, floral musk. There's a little bit of a candied sugar about it, but it's a quiet one. It's not bold. It's subtle.
I love that. More everyday.
Yeah.
And the men in our lives do deserve to be treated, to be given something delightful. What would you recommend for that luxury gift for men?
I've really been taken with a velvet slipper. I love the history of a velvet slipper that, English man, British man, French man, typically they left the fields, they got off their horses and carriages and into their houses, and they left their boots at the door and slipped into a lovely, perhaps embroidered velvet slipper, leather soled. You can get them from Crockett & Jones, Trickers. They're available by many other brands. But I just thought how elegant. I think by the 1900s, movie stars, had started wearing them out. It wasn't today or yesterday. But I think that's a shoe that you can wear inside in black velvet, perhaps embroidered with your monogram or maybe a pheasant or a crown or whatever you wanted. It's something you could wear inside with your smoking jacket, obviously, or your wonderful, beautiful dressing gown from New and Lingwood in silk. So I think I'd like a man dressed like that for Christmas.
I love it. And then, Brenda, finally, take us into the stratosphere. Give us the most luxury of all luxury, something that maybe could sit on our wish lists forever, or if we're lucky enough, we could find under the tree this year.
Doesn't get bigger or bolder than Bulgari, does it? Oh my goodness, the jewels that I saw yesterday at Bulgari were phenomenal. They were giant yellow diamonds, white diamonds, a huge Colombian emerald, all fantastically fashioned, put together. Some had bows, some were reminiscent of the Art Deco period. There were necklaces, there were crossover bangles with fantastic sapphires and diamonds. There were rings. It was just a visual feast. It really was incredible. And I wouldn't have minded any of them to be found under my tree.
Good luck to Brenda and anyone who wants to get that under their Christmas tree this year. That was Monocle's Brenda Toohey speaking with Anita Riotta. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Monica Lidis, our researcher was Joanna Moser, and our studio manager was Christy O'Grady. The Briefing is back on Monday at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Have a great weekend, 1st December weekend, everyone. Thanks for listening.